Don't let POTUS trip. Well, that's apparently the mission for Biden's campaign and the work up to November 2024, per an Axios report. Democrats and those close around the president are worried about the 80-year-old's fitness to make it on the trail, possibly suffering another fall that could jeopardize his re-election run.
Age isn't Biden's only concern. According to reports, former Secretary of State in 2016, presidential candidate Hillary Clinton warned Biden about a third-party candidate thwarting his re-election run. And per NBC News, which first reported the story, Clinton pulled him aside at an event at the White House and advised him to take third-party challengers seriously. Recall that in 2016, the mainstream narrative was that Clinton's hope of becoming president was dashed by the third-party candidate, Dr. Jill Stein.
Meanwhile, Democratic Congressman from Minnesota, Dean Phillips, is considering challenging Biden. Here he is on podcast The Warning with host Steve Schmidt. Let's take a look.
I haven't ruled it out. I think it's a steep slope, particularly in light of what I'm reading, the polling, the data, and what I'm sensing in my own intuition. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned that there is no alternative. I'm concerned that something could happen between now and next November that would make the Democratic Convention in Chicago an unmitigated disaster.
All right, Dean Phillips.
I was going to ask you, I've never heard of him before.
I had to remind myself. He's a representative from Minnesota. I don't know if he's the guy.
Is that where Mall of America is, right?
Don't do Minnesota like that. It's a perfectly great state. My beef is not with the people of Minnesota or their elected representatives. The question is whether or not he's the answer to Biden's, I think, very real problems, where, as we discussed in an earlier segment, most Americans don't want this matchup. Most Democrats don't want him to be the nominee. You know, it does seem to me very odd that these discussions are happening about replacing Biden while the two candidates that have already announced and are running against him are never mentioned. As a reminder, their names are Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr. RFK Jr. has pulled as high as 20%. Marianne Williamson has pulled as high as, I think, 11%. Dean Phillips thinks he can do better.
He clearly does.
Yeah, dude.
I've never heard of Dean before, and I'm not trying to make fun of the congressman. I've never heard of him, but I will say, look, here's someone who recognizes that the voters want a different voice, a younger voice, and he's throwing his hat into the ring, and I will applaud him for that, for trying to be a solution to the problem. But Brie, this is what I thought was really interesting, though, that Axios report, the steps that they're taking in terms of Biden, making sure he wears tennis shoes. He's working with a physical therapist now, fitness coach rather, to work on balance. They're having, I think, lowered steps into Air Force One, I believe now. I mean, I applaud them for taking these measures for someone who is 80 years old. But I do wonder, in the terms of voters, will they look at this and say, if you have to do all of these things, maybe he shouldn't be president? Yes, and we're going to get into the alternate theory of what the Democratic Party might be up to in a second. But I just want to, before we move on, touch on this third-party voter Hillary
point.
Clinton,
Hillary Clinton giving people advice in this particular context, I got to say, is a little triggering. Remember, she, as far as I know, has never taken accountability for the role her own campaign played in her loss. As far as I remember, she's just been talking about how Russians hacked the election and how the emails damned her. It wasn't that she didn't campaign in the Midwest. It wasn't that somehow she lost 88,000 voters, black voters in Wisconsin, who came out and voted in 2012, but not only declined to vote for her in 2016, the margin of her loss in that state, if I'm remembering this correctly, was smaller than the number of people who came out and voted that year in 2016, but left the top of the ticket blank because they had such personal distaste for Hillary Clinton as a candidate. So, that is why so many of us on the left think it's very rich that she blames third-party voters.
Everybody else,
there are a lot of different pools of voters that she could have pulled from.
But Brie, why do you think it is, though, so difficult for Hillary Clinton to take responsibility for her losses? I mean, there are some people on the right who believe the previous election was stolen. I don't share that belief. And to me, this is in the same vein as Donald Trump not taking responsibilities for the faults, to be quite honest, on his campaign.
Well, I
Some
do
of those
think that
mishaps.
they're different insofar as far as we know, Hillary Clinton didn't engage in a conspiracy across 7 states to get
No, I'm not.
senior
No,
members
I'm
of the
not. No,
Republican
Brie,
Party to submit a fake
I'm not
slate of
comparing.
electors.
I'm not comparing
I think it's
illegalities. But what I'm saying is, she's still stuck on the past, just like Donald Trump is still stuck on the past.
Sure, but I don't think
that's my point.
But Donald Trump, I'm not upset with Trump for feeling like he was treated unfairly in the election, or thinking that the election was stolen from him because the media was biased against him, or anything like that. I think those are perfectly legitimate things to say. My quibble with Donald Trump is only insofar as that he allegedly engaged in a scheme with co-conspirators to actually submit a false slate of electors that undermined the democratic choice made by millions of voters across the country. But in terms of rhetorically, yeah, neither has taken accountability.
People, move on, Hillary. No one wants to hear from Hillary or her husband, Bill Clinton, anymore.
And this third party question, I think, is interesting because if you do want to, what does it mean from Hillary Clinton's perspective to take third party candidates seriously? What would it mean for her to have taken Jill Stein seriously? There is a model of this that is perhaps apocryphal, that back in 2000, Ralph Nader came to the Democratic Party, came to Al Gore and said, here is a number of my concerns. If you agree to concede to some of these points, if you adopt some of these issues as part of your platform, by the way, these are issues that a majority of the Democratic Party want to see enacted, and that would actually help you constructively win this election, then I'll drop out of the race. The Democratic Party never seems to want to address third-party claims by actually absorbing some of their agenda. They just say, damn you, you're a spoiler. They try to use threats and vote blue no matter who, and the threats of what a Republican candidacy would mean.
You know what's interesting to me
dissuade people.
In that regard, I think you're making a very salient point. And you said this, I think, yesterday, Brie, in terms of the libertarians, Tea Party folks, all of these sort of other external groups that are still under the Republican umbrella. The overall GOP will, for the most part, embrace them because they just want to win. I think the only critique overall in terms of former President Trump is to just move on and talk about the issues of today and talk about the future, not so much about the past. But it does appear to me that Hillary Clinton not only is uniquely focused on the past, but I would argue if she had her choice, would probably want the process to not even allow third-party Democratic-leaning candidates to be able to run at all, if she could have it that way.
Right. Well, we don't have to deal in hypotheticals there. The Democratic Party has engaged in ferocious efforts, stronger efforts than any other group in the United States of America, to kick third parties off the ballot. There was a really promising candidate, a veteran named Matthew Hoh, that was running for Senate in North Carolina. He got the requisite ballots that he needed, signatures they needed to get on the ballot. The Democratic Party and a Clinton lawyer actually spent an enormous amount of money and energy to try to challenge his ballot access in court.
Brie, I've never understood. Why does that party apparatus continue to do that?
The only way to legally and democratically confront the risks or the challenges presented by a third-party run is to move to the left, is to listen to those third parties and to absorb the parts of the agenda.
But is there an
American
ideological difference from someone like a center-left individual like Clinton versus more progressives? Is that why there's such discord between the camps? Do they just purely dislike them because of what they want to do to the political apparatus, generally speaking? I don't understand.
Yes, there's a great deal of ideological difference,
okay.
Shermichael.
I'm not a Democrat, so I'm not sure.
No, there's a significant, I am also not a Democrat.
Well, I'm not of the left either,
significant degree of ideological difference. But let's move on, because this is really the juicy part of the story here.
Yeah.
So as many people might be aware, Gavin Newsom and Ron DeSantis are going to be squaring off in a debate. You might think you missed the Gavin Newsom presidential race announcement. You did not. This debate has been, it's going to be on Fox News. It's going to be in November in the battleground state, Georgia. Fox News has described it as a red versus blue state debate. I guess they can't call it a presidential debate since, again, one of these guys is not an announced candidate. Both men have been fiercely critical of each other, with Newsom tearing into DeSantis' anti-COVID lockdown stance and DeSantis routinely blasting the liberal leader of California.
This is interesting because Newsom has previously said he will not challenge President Biden, but the debate is fueling speculation that he might make a run for the president. If not in 2024, than in the future. Though while Biden's underwater poll numbers are at the forefront of the current news cycle, the Washington Post argues, well, look, this is interesting to me. And I think that particular piece from the Washington Post, people should pay a lot of attention to. I'm not certain, Brie, that Newsom is thinking of, for 2028.
No,
I think this is a test for if Biden, if it doesn't work out for Biden, I am your guy, Democratic Party.
So here's the theory that I saw floated. That they're going to get rid of Kamala Harris. Robbie swears that it's going to be so hard to get rid of Kamala Harris. I can't think of something easier in the world than finding a place to park one of the most unpopular, nobody cares about her, nothing politicians in American history. And so I saw this theory floated that because Newsom is in this bit of a pickle where he has to appoint a replacement for Feinstein, there are announced candidates and he feels like he can't get in the mix and put his finger on the scale. He has said that he's going to appoint a black woman to replace Feinstein. Barbara Lee is running, but she's running with Katie Porter and another candidate. And it feels as though he can't get in the mix of that. However, if Kamala Harris needed to be parked someplace, she's the black woman du jour. Send her back to the Senate to temporarily fill the position. Right?
Yeah.
That opens up a vacancy in the VP spot. Slide Gavin Newsom in there, and then he never even has to run. Slide Gavin Newsom in there. Joe Biden is ailing. He's sick. He steps aside. He's incapacitated, and then we have a built-in.
But Brie, can I ask you this question? I mean, how would you factor in potential discontent with black women voters?
Nobody cares.
You don't think so?
First of all, the Democratic Party could not care less about black women voters, and I don't know how much more evidence there needs to be about that.
But would you be worried about them not turning out in high numbers?
Guess who is black women? You did this. Congratulations. Guess who is the most loyal? Well, the most dedicated, most vote blue no matter who. You tell them they ain't black and slap them in the face and they'll still not only queue up and vote for you, but get 10 of their neighbors to come with you. Black women. And that's why black women, I don't like that this is true, but this is the hard, cold reality, get zero respect in a political context. You know who gets courted? Groups that sometimes don't vote for Democrats, like Latino voters.
Yeah, I mean, Brie, I think that's a good point, but I am almost certain that the White House would have to factor in, if we were to replace Kamala Harris, what are the implications for our most loyal voting bloc?
Do you know a single black woman who wouldn't vote to stop Trump because Kamala Harris was no longer the president, vice president?
No.
Honestly, and there we go.
No, I have to be honest about that. No, I don't. I mean, there you go. That's a fair point.
I mean, you do know one because you're sitting at a table with her.
I got to tell you, Brie, I mean, that would talk about unprecedented.
Yeah.
But again, why else would Newsom go all the way to Georgia to debate with Ron DeSantis, who will not become the nominee this time around? I think is going to run again in 2028. Unless, and I tweeted something about this a few days ago. I said this is an opportunity for Newsom to articulate to the Democratic Party that he is a better messenger on what he would purport are Democratic successes than Joe Biden. He looks good. He's a charismatic guy. He's given multiple interviews on Fox News.
I've never seen him trip, physically or rhetorically.
So, I just think that I think he's a candidate that would be palatable for a lot of mainstream Democrats who do want, we talked about this yesterday, based on the numbers, they want someone else. But if he does this, what does the White House do? I mean, do they say, what are you doing, Gavin? Do they not say anything?
I don't think any of this would be happening without White House approval.
No way, Brie. Really?
Yeah. I don't think that Gavin Newsom is not ruining alliances that he has in support that he needs going forward over a stunt debate in Georgia. There's nothing that is happening right now that is not
Brie, what the hell is going on here?
I think we're all going to find out very soon. Very, very soon. All right. We'll have more Rising for you right after this.